And that was 15 minutes. So again, the hope is not that you're going, okay, I won't get nearly what I thought I could in 15 minutes, or wow, I got to hold that done in 15 minutes, but just that you kind of get used to what you can accomplish. We're going to do this a couple times. Obviously, the types of questions that are being asked, it might take longer, shorter, the amount of sources that get included. You only had to read 5 instead of 6, or what could be 7, so those are all factors to come into play. If you did not get beyond the synthesis, don't worry about it. Some of you did. Some of you were brainstorming stuff that you were going to do, or at least identifying rhetorical devices, or trying to find some in the Johnson. It looked like some of you were starting to identify some things that you could use for the DRQ. If you only got through the synthesis, you are right on schedule. You're perfectly fine, because you think about the way that things are going to be for us. You're going to have a TWA for Cuckoo's Nest. Anyone remember when you find out the prompt? When you walk in. So on Thursday the 20th, Emma's going to come in. I have a rhetorical analysis. I have a rhetorical analysis. She sits down. There's the rhetorical analysis. She reads the prompt. She's going to read the prompt, brainstorm, write in 40 minutes. So, as will Jesse, as will Nina. Dang. Everyone gets here early on those days. It's funny how that happens. So you'll be used to reading a prompt, brainstorming, writing in 40 minutes. That it's not that you had to figure out all that brainstorming within 15 minutes to do well on this. It was the idea that you have plenty of time to take a look at the source material. So I don't ever want anyone feeling that within those 15 minutes you have to know what you're going to do for all 3 essays. You should know after 15-minute essays what you're going to do for the first essay, or at least have a pretty good idea to it. Anything else that you can figure out, that's just extra, and that kind of lets you go, okay, good. If you don't get to look at all the essays within the first 15 minutes, I would at least familiarize yourself with them before you begin writing, just so you know what's kind of coming up next. Not to divert attention away from what it is that you're going to do, but at the very least you know that, okay, I'm going to have to write about, do people want freedom, or do people want to be safe? This kid wants to go to school, and that guy's not going to write a letter for him? Okay, I got to start thinking about that, just so it's kind of going off in the back of your head while you're working on your synthesis. Most folks are going to start writing the synthesis. Keep in mind, you choose the question that you want to answer first. First period, I had 2 people tell me they were going to do other questions before the synthesis, just because they felt really good about them, and they were going to do the synthesis second or third. So the order that you want to go in is entirely up to you. Any thoughts about 15 minutes? Seemed like a long time? Surprised it went that quick? Or what? I still have 6 minutes? I thought 15 minutes had passed.
Yeah, I thought it felt way longer than I thought it was.
Yeah, it felt very long.
In a good way of I could get more done than wanted to. The synthesis is the wild card because you never know what the question is going to be about. It could be something like this. It could be about space travel. It could be about what kind of artifacts should be in a museum. How would you fix the post office?
Oh.
Yeah, how do you fix it? I think they really looked at those answers very closely to see which one of these might actually work. Daylight savings time has been on there. I mean, it's just all over the place. So it could be a question that's very accessible. It could be one that makes you kind of think about it for a little bit. With the synthesis, one thing that and I'm pretty sure folks picked up on this, but just to kind of reinforce, you're developing a position on the extent to which the government should be responsible for fostering those green practices. So you could certainly be in favor of more energy saving, conservation, green living practices, but feel that that is too far for the government to step in and go, Grant, use less water. No, you brush your teeth too long. Or you could be like, I am terrible at doing things that'll be better for the environment. Please, government, step in and make me do stuff, because without it, not going to. But, you could be this, the question is not just simply should people do more or are people doing enough, but does the government have the right to kind of regulate that, which is a little bit of a switch, an angle to the question that I don't think some people necessarily pick up on. Did you have a question? Okay. So what do you think? Like, what is the extent to which government should not?
I said high government regulation and encouragement of environmental.
So you would definitely be in favor of, yes, government, do something to make Emma and Mr. Kane do more. Okay. And obviously this could vary from person to person. Any idea what sources you think you might use at this point? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Source B, had the right idea that the government was like encouraging people to pay more if they were getting those energy not efficient cars.
Back in the days when I had my F-150, 8-foot bed, crew cab Heath, that sucker, man, if I hit 5 miles per gallon, I was going downhill. It was not eco-friendly. It was. I've moved on. Okay, so we like B. What else do you like?
Source C said that like America should be a leader in this, and I agreed. But that additional government regulation would be needed
Okay.
for tax, like, yes, okay, I got it now. Then source E, because
The graph.
yeah, the countries listed were all developed countries, but less developed countries actually cannot afford to think about that kind of conservation.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking like, I would say it's also our job.
Further, but like I don't know how they would in some senses. So for example, the whole biofuel thing from source D,
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge limitation to regulating that we should do, but we can't.
So
Because of lack of money.
the idealistic versus the realistic.
Right.
Like you could see, idealistically, this would be great. Realistically, I'm not sure how much could truly happen.
Right.
One of the things I thought was kind of interesting, and obviously the source is dated, in that the essay, the prompt is from 2011, source B is coming from 2006, but you know, the second part, start with Singapore's general approach to every policy issue. That's an idea you think would appeal to President Bush, America's first MBA chief executive. Well, now we have president where business is basically, you know, the background. So that's something where just having that reference to President Bush, America's first MBA chief executive, that could spark a connection for you with President Trump that you would then maybe kind of start to take a look at some business aspects, you know, of career before politics and whatnot. The one thing that not one thing, but with the Singapore, the nice little detail is where does the money for that permit go if you're going to buy the car?
Public transport.
The infrastructure for public transportation. So I think like a permit like this, you could see working in Pittsburgh. We have public transportation. Is it going to work in Elwood City? Probably not as much, but if the infrastructure is going in for more mass transit, you know, you might be able to kind of make some things work. Emma had fun today because she looked at the clock and was like, wow, time's up. How about that? So tomorrow, no homework. You're just reading Cuckoo's Nest. We're going to take a look. Anything else with the synthesis question tomorrow, and then we'll take a look at the other two questions just to, you know, talk about, see what we think with the ideas for them. That's right. Do your academic integrity statement. It's like the second thing on Google Classroom, so it's pretty easy to find. And keep in mind, certainly, like it's requiring that you use 3, which you mentioned. If Emma wanted to keep going, by all means you could. If I were to write it, I think I'd probably use 4. I don't think I would use A. It's just there's just not enough there for me to really develop a position. I could see myself definitely using B. I skipped C. Just wasn't good. Not that I didn't like the source, just wasn't going to work as well for me. But then D, E, and F, I all thought I could utilize. The hope is, after using your Great Depression Bible, after reading a lot of the other sources that we did, and we're going to do more synthesis essays, that the idea of having to incorporate 3 sources does not seem that bad at all. You go, wow, that's pretty manageable. And again, you could have some body paragraphs where you don't have any source material, but you still be pulling from personal experience or other ideas. Anyone taking environmental science? I mean, this is right in your wheelhouse, in theory anyway, you know, that you could certainly be able to bring in content curricular stuff from there that could be useful. I want to take a look at the graph just because I think there's some interesting stuff that kind of shows up on there. And the color coding probably makes a little bit more sense for me than it does for you. It's kind of hard. China and Russia, boy, they look very much the same. All that red. One thing, note, they do go in order, so like US is always at the top, you know, China is always the second one, Russia, Japan, India, which those are ones are kind of easy to figure out. Anything like surprising that you discovered from it or worthwhile that you would certainly want to highlight? Like, Emma, you were saying less developed countries. I mean, they're all developed countries, but India, China would be two countries where you do have a large middle class so far as number of millions and billions of people. But, you know, it's probably especially in India more so, you also have a great divide where you might not have groups of people who are going to have the means to do some environmentally friendly things. And you figure more than half of the world's population is in those two countries. I don't think India's passed China yet, but it's going to happen very, very soon. I think by 2025 or
By 2020.
I was going to say by 2020, and I'm like, wait, that's going to be next year in like a few weeks here.
That's crazy.
Soon, within our lifetimes. But what from here, not just Emma, do you think you could use with the chart, with the graph? Whether you're in favor or against, doesn't mean we're all in favor of what Emma's going to say. Nina?
I think if the US is trying to use less water and they're leading in most of these categories.
Okay. So, I mean, U.S., and then what other nations right up there, if not better than the U.S.? And Japan. So you could certainly see U.S. and Japan, it would seem, are taking the greatest steps, the greatest initiative with it. And I think a lot of it is probably we're more aware of it. I mean, when I was a little kid, it was turn the water off when you're brushing your teeth. And now that's kind of been ingrained more so. My parents, just because they were cheap, I don't think it had anything to do with the environment. If they found that your lights were left on in your room, they would charge you like 50 cents. I quickly turned off my lights, Emma. My brother, Jeff, did not. He lost money. So those things have kind of been ingrained a little bit more so. What else? I know your hand was up too.
I was going with in favor of more government involvement through taxes and incentives.
You're not going to win any elections by saying that.
It's funny because it contradicts my stance on the last DRQ. But I was just gonna focus on the U.S. stats and say the majority of people do these three things, but the U.S. still puts out a ton of bad stuff and is still one of the worst in terms of carbon emissions and stuff. So I was gonna say that people want to try and help and are doing things that are trying to help, but it'll be more helpful if the government creates more incentives.
We need that extra push.
Yeah.
And really, how disruptive are these three things doing? Trying to use less water in your household, avoid using certain products that harm the environment, voluntarily recycled newspaper, glass, aluminum, motor oil, or other items. How much time does this take out of my daily routine if it's not a part of it to add this stuff in? Use less water. Okay. That was 0.2 seconds. Now maybe, taking a shorter shower could be difficult. It's not so bad for me. Some others in here, your flowing locks, that might take a little bit more time. Which one on here would take the most energy, no pun intended, to actually be part of? Being an active group. And who's leading the group in that one? I mean, technically, the U.S., as Nina was saying, is kind of in the lead, but really the honest answer is no one. Everyone is below 20%. Maybe we're at that, 18.5%, 19%. They don't have little tick marks for us. So, if there were ever an argument to take from the graph, that certainly we're trying, but clearly we're not taking that full step, full initiative. This is the reason that we need some government control, not because the government, and again, not saying that you have to take that stance, not because the government needs to flex its muscle, but we as a people aren't doing it. We need a kick in the butt to kind of head in that direction. You don't have to quote stats in order to use the source. So you could easily go, clearly the hard part is really changing your livelihood and being part of an organization that's make a change. And since that is not happening anywhere in the world, source E, it would be in the best interests of the U.S. and globally for governments to play a more active part. That would be a way that you could certainly utilize that source. I think source would probably be one that a lot of folks would use. And this is becoming much more typical of synthesis sources. I'd say at least since like 2010, where not because, hey, all this stuff here is going to make you want to, take a certain claim, but bullet points. They tend to have a source that gives you lots of options that you can kind of make reference to. So it's not that you'd have to quote all of those things, but I could certainly see if someone were on the fence and not knowing, I don't know what my position is going to be, you could take a look at some of this stuff and go, okay, those are some things that I could kind of start to take a look at. Like using compact fluorescent light bulbs with Energy Star labels. No longer can appliances that are not Energy Star efficient meet that standard be sold. Duquesne Light, Penn Power send out little light bulb kits, to homeowners and all that kind of stuff. The thing on here where it talks about plug home electronics, the power company has sent us like 3 of the power strips where there's the mother load, where if the TV's on, the other outlets work. So you can plug in your Xbox, your DVD player. Well, we don't really have those anymore, and other things. But once you turn the TV off, the surround sound, the Xbox, the Nintendo Switch, all of those. How did your gameplay go?
With Nick after?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. All of those things would then shut off, so there's not that little bit of energy drain that would be taking place. So I think source F is nice just because it gives you things that you can kind of use. More often than not, that tends to be a source A or B. But this one's kind of tucked away at the end. But I think that's a good source for kind of giving you ideas. Anyone go, no, like government should not have any?
I feel like I'd qualify it in the sense that, like, the government should regulate emissions